We're looking at how to answer an F6 exam standard question in 10 easy steps, and we have reached step number 6. On step number 6, what I'd like to remind you is some empty shells. When you have looked at your requirement, if you remember, we highlighted what is it that we were required to do. We were required to do, for instance, an income tax payable, and we say to ourselves, for income tax payable, I know that I'm going to require an income tax computation. So at your step 6, what I'd like to take you through is simply your empty shells, or as I would call them, pro formas. So let's go away and take a look at a few pro formas that we come across in our F6 studies. I've brought back Peter Sheik in front of you. Question 1 in the pilot paper. Calculate the income tax payable by Peter Sheik for 2011-12. Now, if you remember, we highlighted for ourselves that income tax payable was income tax computation. So let's take a look at our income tax computation, or our income tax pro forma. We have, for instance, trading income, employment income, rental income, any business income. So basically what we are doing is that we're listing down our different types of incomes that are either received net or gross. Do we need to gross them up so that we get to what we call our total income? Once we get to our total income, we will be deducting any reliefs, for instance, interest paid on a qualifying loan, to get us our net income. Once we get the net income, we can then deduct our personal allowance from there to get our taxable income. So what I have done here is I have simply told myself about the pro forma that I would require, an empty shell, or a format, if you'd like to think of it. From just reading that requirement line, I've told myself, okay, an income tax payable will require an income tax pro forma, and this is my checklist, if you like to say. What you will find is that not all the items in the pro forma will necessarily feature in the question. For instance, if you look at Peter Sheik, we never had any trading income for Peter Sheik. Yes, we had some rental, some employment. We never had any pension income. So it is not necessary that every item will feature, but what you will notice is that a pro forma will serve as a good checklist for you to be able to decide what you need to do. I will bring in front of you another type of requirement that we have seen before, which was Paul Opus from the pilot paper. We were told to compute the capital gains tax liability. So reminding myself about the capital gains tax liability, I know I'm going to require the CGT computation. So I'll quickly remind myself of the pro forma, or the format of the CGT computation. And I see I require some sales proceeds, and if there are any sales costs attached to that, I need to deduct this incidental cost of sale to give me the net sales proceeds. From that, I can deduct what we call allowable costs, which include the cost of acquisition, any incidental cost of acquisition, as well as any enhancement expenses, to give me the capital gain that I need. From that point, I will think about any reliefs that come against that disposal to get the gains after reliefs, and bring in any losses that were brought forward, any annual exemption for the year, to give us the taxable gains. Again, what I've done is that I've just reminded myself of an empty shell about which I can use for answering the question. So to summarize our 6th step, what we've just seen is that reminding ourselves of the format is probably a good plan to tell us what we need to do in the question. And as I mentioned earlier on, it is not necessary that every item in the format will necessarily feature in the question. What you see is that the format does serve as a good checklist for you in order to answer the question.